Hi everyone, I'm Mork and I make minis in HeroForge. This week's mini is Samuel, and Samuel is the third character I ever made in HeroForge, so it's been really quite some long time, and I got around to reworking him. So, on the right side here, we see Samuel, the third character I ever made in HeroForge, and on the left side we have the new Samuel. So Samuel as a character, for me, it's someone who I like sketched when I was like a teenager or something like that, but the character has always kind of like stuck with me. And I would say that Samuel is kind of like an important character to me because the fantasy world that I have in my head, Samuel was kind of the catalyst of that world and its rules. And that's why he's also the new mascot of the channel. Some aspects of Samuel have not changed, like the clothes, like the hairstyle. So really this was just more about like polishing the existing character. For example, when we take a look at the scars here, you can kind of see how much of a difference there is between the two guys. I got the look done better, much more on this guy right here. Another thing that Samuel has is his sword. His sword is what I call his liquid blade. Essentially, it's like it's a it's a sword that kind of just is able to adjust itself on the fly. If you are performing like a piercing movement, it kind of adjusts itself into that kind of a sword, like an S-stock, for example. Or if the sword is suddenly like doing like a slashing motion, it is able to change itself into more of a slashing weapon. So that's kind of like the idea with the liquid sword. And this liquid sword is coming from Samuel's magic, which is not his ass right here. God damn it. And the sword is essentially summoned by Samuel himself. He summons it from his own hands, which is like the part of the magic of the Lionsheart's guild. And you can see in the old mini that I used to have like some hands around, and you know, I kind of like that idea. These hands are actually like zombie hands in my old mini, but I felt like I could do something a little bit better. So the new Samuel is slaying a monster in his miniature, and we will get to that as well. So the monster is a she. I don't know why I need to clarify that, but I guess you can like see it slightly, very slightly on the chest there. I just wanted to show off what this liquid blade is capable of and what Samuel is capable of. I kind of imagine this is like a sort of a forest scene where he got suddenly ambushed by this monster and he just completely destroys it and annihilates it. Yeah, I don't usually have a chance to like cut off people's arms, so I thought this was like a kind of a cool opportunity to do so. Another fun thing about this monster is that it's still completely awake. It has its eyes wide open, and this part right here, when I was like working on this sort of a blood as it like is kind of mixing in with the liquid sword, it was pretty difficult to like I felt slightly sick as I was working on this part because I just kept imagining this monster as it's like full of blood and it's like drowning on its own blood, and I kind of like tried to sell this sort of an effect of it like gushing like blood out of its mouth as it's like choking on it by like putting it here and smeared also here. And you know, just Samuel is just casually stepping onto it, like he doesn't really have any sort of a reaction. You know, his pose is very much like extremely casual. Maybe I kind of imagine that maybe he just dropped that sword inside of the monster, you know, or maybe he is summoning the sword like back so it like comes back to his own hand, you know. I actually use like very delicate lighting in this mini. I guess you wouldn't be able to notice that if I didn't tell you, but I think it actually does quite a bit. So if I go to the lights here and I disable this light, it looks like this. You can kind of see on the face how it looks like. And when I enable it, it lights up his face in a much better way. I kind of used it because I just wanted you to see the scars more clearly. And another light that we have, this is almost lowest intensity possible, but this one is dark magic light. So it looks like this when it's enabled, and it looks like this when it's disabled. Yeah, and really just this super weak darkness source is there to just enhance the shadows a little bit. And I don't really think people really are using that in HeroForge, which is also why I kind of like did like a tutorial on that. So it's a really small thing, but I think it makes the mini look much cooler, and I like it. This miniature is pretty much all about the contrast of this like confident aura farming pose versus of whatever is going down here. And the reason why I also included this monster is for a practical purpose. I kind of struggled to figure out like a newer pose for Samuel, and I just kind of like landed on this pose, but the sword had like an issue where it was not supported by anything. So really this monster also has a practical purpose, and it's there to support the blade, so it doesn't like if the mini ever gets printed, it will be supported properly. Now let's go dive in and take a look at some previous versions of Samuel. This is what Samuel kind of looked like when I reset his face. I immediately got rid of the hands. I did like the hands, but I just didn't feel like they were quite Samuel's theme and what he was about. And really the first steps were about getting the face right. One part of his face is scarred, and you can get like a sort of a similar effect. Here I'm using like delicate features as my main head, but when you go to the mouth here, I am using damaged features. So when I just up the detail, it looks like this, and when I make it lower, it looks exactly like this. So if you want to make some sort of a character that has maybe like slightly damaged face, you can like do it like so. It's a pretty cool way to do it. I imagine that he was like burned, so getting those scars right for me was like very important. This is a bit of a more intense variation of Samuel's face. Everything is just done with the decals here. Decals layers. You can 100% do something similar. I wanted his face to be sort of a thing where he does look attractive as a character, but also where he may be like hard to look at, you know, at the same time. This is the part where I was trying to figure out the new pose for Samuel. And the biggest issue with Samuel as a mini is the sword. You know, I didn't really want the sword to poke out of the miniature stand. I kind of wanted it to be contained inside the miniature circle, mostly for like practical reasons, because if you have it like out like that, it could like possibly get like broken. More trying to figure out and couldn't figure out what to do with the sword. I was also possibly thinking about adding like multiple swords and put him in a sort of a pose where he commands all of them as they are kind of like circling around him. And then I kind of had the idea to just like plunk the sword, just one sword down and just put it inside the middle of the miniature. Here is where I started like putting Samuel into the pose. I wanted to be like very confident and also like very casual looking at the same time. Here is where I settled on the pose, and you can see, like I was saying, like it just doesn't really seem like all that stable, and at this point I just wasn't sure how else to like progress the mini. Like I just didn't know really like what else to put, and then I had the idea to put in there a monster. Now I really wasn't sure what the monster was supposed to be at first. I was feeling like it should be something that is like something undead, but then it kind of started evolving itself into a Sasquatch, Sasquatch-like creature. And yeah, the idea was always there that the sword is gonna be penetrating the mouth of the victim. This was mostly all about just like setting up the monster to be in the correct position. I started supporting the monster also with the rocks here, and I kind of just chose a sort of a hairstyle. It goes kind of like this, but on this monster specifically here, it looks more like it's just hair that is affected by gravity. I kind of switched up the design into a monkey person rather than something that is undead. The details of the monster were just as important for me as were the details of Samuel. It was more or less done with the posing. So at first I was going like rather mild, you know? And at some point I was like, this is like way too much blood that I'm actually using here. So I like dialed back some of the blood just so that we are able to see like the face of the monster a little bit better. Now it was actually quite fun, like using, like going through the different decals on this sort of a monster, because like whenever I put like any sort of a decal, I got to imagine like, does it look like something that could possibly be like blood flowing down a person's face, you know? So that was really cool. So here I'm, for example, using the tear mask, you know, but I kind of like imagine that in this case it's just kind of like flowing from the mouth into the eye sockets. But I still had like an issue with this sort of an area and this sort of an area because it looked like way too empty, and I really just wanted to improve the environment to make it feel a little bit more special. I just started putting in some oak leaves, and then I combined them with, of course, some acorns, because the tree reproduces with acorns, so. And I just kind of went crazy with the leaves and the acorns. And then after I added those leaves and those acorns, I also wanted the leaves to be affected by the blood. It's really just supposed to be a sort of a contrast between like a peaceful nature and this peaceful nature being covered up in gory blood. And after I did that, I felt like the rest of the mini could be also just a little bit more bloody. And that's it for the mini. Let me know what you think, and yeah, next mini is gonna be also another rework, so I'm looking forward to that. Alright, take care, enjoy your day, and bye bye.